John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Every day at this time, we get the insight from John on the NFL and the Eagles, of course, as they had an early morning practice today. They told everybody in a very timely fashion that they were moving that time. John, were you able to make the adjustments to get there?
Yeah, it rained, so it can affect things late, but it happens. And
well,
it's not that big of a deal. It's just you try to get there as early as possible, especially on days like that, because it's something's going to happen. It just always does when it rains a little bit.
Well, they elected to have practice at 9:20 this morning, so a lot of news came out early, including that Malcolm Jenkins had got a concussion. They was going through the protocol. We now found out that it happened in the second quarter of that game the other night. And I guess the question would be, was he out there practicing, and does he appear ready to go? Because obviously, if he was playing with a concussion the other night, he probably could have further injured himself and made that thing worse.
Yeah, it didn't. In fact, he practiced, and he not only practiced, wasn't limited at all. So he's online to play. Chip kind of hinted on that Wednesday when he said he would be back. So there was a lot of confidence. Obviously, to me, it's a bigger issue, though, and it really envelops more of the NFL and the fact that this is another example of a guy who had a concussion, and it wasn't obvious. No one saw it at the time. I certainly didn't. The independent spotter didn't see it at the time. Some of his teammates, especially in the defensive backfield, knew he got his bell rung, but Jenkins didn't want to alert anyone, and he wanted to play. He played the entire game, so he played basically over 30 minutes of football with a concussion, and obviously in today's environment, that's an issue for the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what, I guess – the question would be, can the Eagles be penalized for this? Can the player be penalized? I mean, for him openly admitting that he played, I don't know what the protocols or the rules are for that, but is there any danger of some penalties for somebody or something?
No, there isn't really, because there's nothing you can do. If a player doesn't say there's anything wrong with them, and you have all these mechanisms in place from the coaching staff to again, independent spotters, officials on the field, and nobody recognized it, it's tough to blame. But on the other side of the coin, these advocates who always push for safety and concussion awareness also have to realize that, Malcolm Jenkins isn't the only player in this league that will do that. In fact, the vast majority will try to feign that they're okay to get back on the field. And that's still the mentality in this league, and I talk about it all the time. It's a big difference from being 25 and being 55. 25, you might not care. 55, all of a sudden, you realize I shouldn't have done that. But I don't know how you can correct that. And really, it's not the NFL's fault. It's not the player's fault. He wants to play, and there's only so much you can do.
So we cleared up the concussion issue today. John has more on that on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. Jason Peters would be the other guy. Now, I did see some tweets suggesting that Lane Johnson felt that he was going to be playing left tackle this week. What do you know about that?
Yeah, he's expecting to play again at left tackle, and he's preparing to play at left tackle. He got most of the reps today. Jason took a few, but he was limited again. And it looks like, at least for now, they're going to err on the side of caution. But, Jason said Wednesday that if we're up to him, he'd be playing. So this looks like the staff is pumping the brakes, and we'll see. It's still early. There's still a very good chance that Jason Peters could step up and play. Because, remember, he doesn't need a lot of preparation. He's been doing it at a high level for a long time, and Lane Johnson has obviously been playing right tackle for a long time, so it wouldn't take much for him to get comfortable at his normal position. So right now, Lane is preparing to start at left tackle, but that doesn't necessarily signal anything because he can easily make the switch over. And I think it's prudent to get Lane as many reps as they can if he has to play left tackle.
John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com for more on the Eagles. Sam Bradford is the big story, obviously, for them moving forward here. He mentioned something about we're starting to feel more comfortable with we found some things that we like to do. Are there certain things that you're seeing from Sam that he is excelling? I don't want to say excelling, doesn't seem like the right word for the way he's played, but are there things that look like he looks more comfortable in?
Well, he excels on that wheel route, I'll tell you, and he really throws it well, and that's the one pass that he's been basically perfect on from the beginning of the season. Even when he was playing poorly, he threw that particular route really, really well. It worked again against the Cowboys, and that's an example of it. I think the bigger issue with his improvement, though, is just comfort and the fact that he's more comfortable with the knee as he gets through games and he realizes, hey, I'm not going to get hurt again. And the second part is there is more comfort in the offense and that he's getting used to the bell cow plays they have. And, again, it's repetition because they run basically the same grouping of plays, and he's just becoming more comfortable with them.
John, Murray, Matthews, we know everybody's going to have their pick there, but is Murray and Matthews also getting more comfortable in this offense, or is the running game success more of a byproduct of the offensive line becoming more comfortable?
I think it's a combination of both. The offensive line has certainly picked up their play, and they've been very good basically for the last 4 or 5 games as a whole. Alan Barber, even, which was the real weak link, has played at least to an acceptable level, and Jason Kelsey, after the poor start, has started to pick it up. So that's a big part of it, and you're not getting those plays early in drives where you lose 4 or 5 yards, and once you do that, drive's basically over. And that's for anybody, not just Sam Bradford, not just the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're the New England Patriots and you have to convert 2nd and 15, you're probably not going to do it. It's just very difficult in this league. So once they stop those negative plays, things have not only helped in the running game, but also the offense as a whole. So there's no question Murray doesn't look as comfortable in this offense as he did in Dallas, but he's looking more comfortable. And Ryan Matthews does look comfortable, and he has running the football, and that's because he's got the explosion to get to the edge. And so I don't think it was a problem with him from the start.
John, let me get your thoughts, too, on Jordan Matthews moving forward. Do you anticipate that game gave him some confidence and that they could game plan for more usage of him? Can they, now start to try to feature him a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to help him because he's back feeling he can make plays and he's not going to drop the football all the time. And even when he was, though, he was being featured. And more than anything, it's because there really isn't a lot of other receivers you can go to. So other than Sam seems to be really comfortable with Miles Austin, it's basically been Jordan Matthews or bust at the receiver position. And we've talked about it for weeks now. Somebody else has to step up, whether it's Nelson Aguilar or Josh Huff. And of those two, I would assume that Aguilar has a better opportunity to do so simply because I haven't seen anything from Josh Huff. I always use Pro Football Focus. Some people like it, some people don't. But to give you an example of how bad the receivers have been for the Eagles, of all of them, Riley Cooper is the top-rated Eagles receiver at number 9 in the NFL. And if you think about that, obviously there's 32 teams. You have your top 2 receivers. That'll get you to 64. And the Eagles don't show up till 89. That's how bad all of them have been, including Matthews. But he's been the volume guy because you got to throw it to somebody. Now, against Dallas, he finally caught the football and played well, and hopefully that'll continue as we get into the second half of the season.
We're at the halfway point of the season. I want to ask you, John also covers the NFL nationally for today's pigskin.com, which, by the way, you wrote an article about Lane Johnson switching position from right to left. And I guess the anticipation, John, is that he would be the new left tackle once Jason Peters can't go anymore. But When do we think that is? I mean, what is the life expectancy here of Jason Peters?
Well, it's becoming a concern. There's no question about it because he's 33 years old. And when he started this season, he was one of the three oldest regular starting offensive linemen in the league. So there aren't a lot of guys older than Jason Peters that are playing at a high level. And then you add in the fact that the injuries are cropping up, and a back injury for a guy who's, approaching his mid-30s. Then you talk about the weight he carries, and he's already had 2 Achilles injuries. It's becoming a concern, and you can see he's far closer to the end than the beginning. So I thought from day one that was a prudent draft choice for the Eagles. I thought it was a good pick, and I thought it made a lot of sense because it was a guy who had the athleticism to move to the left side, and he basically proved it last week. He's going to be a pretty good left tackle when he eventually gets over there, and he's only going to get better. Remember, he switched mid-season with 1 week of practice time and held his own against Greg Hardy in a pretty good front. So that's a very good sign.
All right, John, midway through the year, let's go through the NFC East and look at each team here. Giants, better, worse, or where you thought they'd be?
Better. I thought the Giants were going to be one of the worst teams in football. I don't think there's a ton of talent. So I think they've done a very good job. Obviously, they're in first place. I don't think they're going to stay there. I just think that lack of talent will show up in the second half. But to this point, you would have to say they've overachieved.
Washington, better, worse, or where you thought they'd be?
About where I thought they would be, and that's a pretty bad football team that occasionally Kirk Cousins gets streaky. He is a streaky passer, and every once in a while he can get you. Like all NFL teams, this isn't college. There aren't any gimmies, and the Redskins have plenty of good players, but overall, this dysfunction that starts at the top of that organization, you expect them to have a bad year, and they are about where you thought they'd be.
By the way, the NFL has issued a statement on Malcolm Jenkins. Quote, "We confirm with the team medical staff that no one, coaches, players, or medical staff, knew anything about it and did not detect any symptoms. We also confirmed that the the ATC spotter upstairs did not see anything to prompt a call down to the medical staff." That's, of course, on Malcolm Jenkins, who played, he said, most of the game with the concussion. So just to throw that out there since we were talking about it. Let me get to Dallas.
That's interesting real quick, Mike, because Walter Thurman and Byron Maxwell both indicated they did know. So to say no players know, that's pretty interesting because those guys told Les Bowen of the Daily News that they did, in fact, talk to Malcolm during the game. And at least were aware something was wrong. Maybe not that he had a concussion, but so that could be something to keep an eye on.
All right, so there's a little nugget there. All right, let me ask you about Dallas. Obviously, they're worse than we thought. We had Jimmy Kempski on earlier, and he did a piece in the summer about reasons teams could be dumpster fires, and he mentioned a lot of different scenarios. I read through that list, and those scenarios seem to be accurate, but the main one is because of Romo not being there. But are the Cowboys a disappointment, even though Romo has been hurt? Are they a disappointment for the team they have even without Romo?
In a weird way, I would say no, because if you think about it, they've been very, very competitive. Last week, another example of it, and they took the Eagles to overtime, and Philadelphia probably should have won that game easier, to be honest. They were in the Seattle game. They were in the Giants game. So they've been very competitive, and I've compared it in the past to when Aaron Rodgers went down in Green Bay a couple of years ago. And I'll say this, the Cowboys have been much more competitive without Tony Romo than the Packers were without Aaron Rodgers. So if you look at it from that standpoint, I don't think they've been, at least the rest of the roster, been that much of a disappointment. It's just the fact you can't win without your quarterback in this league, especially a good quarterback like Tony Romo. So in a weird way, they're exactly where they should be because their quarterback hurt. but I can't be disappointed in individual players because by and large, I think most of them have done their jobs.
And obviously, Philadelphia is at 4-4, right at 500 here. Better, worse? Where do you expect it?
A little bit worse. I'm not one who expected them to be a Super Bowl contender, but I did think they would be right there with the Cowboys fighting for this division. And obviously they're fighting for the division, but you expected more offensively first. We all understand that. They've been better than expected defensively, but overall as a whole, I thought this was a potential 10-win team, and I don't see any way they get to 10 wins. It's possible because they have an easier schedule in the second half, but I think about the numbers, and I think about this team that I've watched through 8 games and saying, can they go 6-2? I don't care who's on the roster. I don't see enough to say this team can go 6-2 over that stretch.
All right, we're at the midway point. Couple surprises in the league so far. Give me your thoughts on them in the second half. I guess the first surprise would be even a 4-4 team could be surprising. It sounds like an average team, but Oakland, 4-4, second half. What do you see?
I think it's good for the Raiders, and that's the first time you can say that since Rich Gannon was the quarterback and they were going to the Super Bowl. So it's been a long time, and I think it starts with the fact they finally picked a good coach in Jack Del Rio, and they made a prudent decision at the quarterback position and a second-round pick in Derek Carr, and he's really taken off in that from his first season to his second season. So he seems to be getting it. Amari Cooper's going to be a star, and when he cleans up the drops, he's going to be in that, Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Antonio Brown category. He's that good. So there's a lot of things to be excited about with the Raiders, and that's the first time you can say that in a very long time. And they're in the playoff hunt this year because those wild card spots we talked about on Tuesday, they're up for grabs, and the Raiders have a very good chance. Big game this week because Minnesota is visiting the Raiders, and those are two teams that are up and coming and interestingly have second-year quarterbacks. So that's a real intriguing game.
A couple other 4-4s. It seems that the St. Louis media is hammering Nick Foles down there. What's the Rams' second half prognostication? Well,
the Rams have a great defensive front, and Todd Gurley's going to be a great running back in this league, and that's how they have to win games right now. They have to run the football, and they have to stop people defensively, and I think they'll do that. But it's difficult to win consistently in the NFL without good quarterback play, and they haven't gotten it. Part of it stems from the fact that, just like you said with Sam Bradford when he was in St. Louis, Nick doesn't have many weapons outside the numbers, so they have to start getting talent. They brought in Wes Welker. I don't know how much he has left. And until they get some people who can help the quarterback, no matter who that quarterback is, it's going to be tough. And they probably are what their record says they are. To pull a Bill Parcells, they're probably a 500 football team.
All right, Seattle, 4-4. Are they a better team in the second half or a average team in the second half?
I think you're going to know real quick because I think Sunday night's game against Arizona, I think this is it for Seattle. If they hold serve, and they usually do in front of the 12th man in Seattle, I think they're on a good trajectory, and I think they'll continue to get better. But I think Arizona is a very good football team, and they have a chance to get a signature win and throw the dirt on the Seahawks. I think if they lose this game, it's a clear signal that the power has shifted in that division to Arizona, and I think it's going to be real difficult for the Seahawks to make a run towards the playoffs when you think about where Minnesota and Green Bay are and where Atlanta is in the NFC South.
All right, John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Couple other teams, just to get a couple of, we're at the halfway point, some of these teams. How about Atlanta, 6-3? Are they Atlanta playoff-bound Atlanta or Atlanta fraud Atlanta?
I think it's both. I mean, if you're thinking 5-0 Falcons, they're a fraud as a 5-0 team. and obviously have lost 3 or 4 and against some pretty pedestrian competition. They're not that good, but I think they put enough in the bank already to say that they're going to get to the postseason, because they have a pretty good leg up on all the other teams. We just, whether it's Seattle, St. Louis, I think it's pretty. You could say it's pretty good. The Vikings and Packers are both going to make the playoffs, so you're going to have that second wild card spot. And the Falcons are in a very good position to get it.
All right, John, last team for you here as we look at the second half teams. Of these teams here, which team, these are all teams under 500, but which of these under 500 teams has the best chance to make the playoffs? You got Miami 3-5, okay? You've got Kansas City 3-5. You have New Orleans at 4-5, and you have Tampa Bay at 3-5. Which of those 4 teams?
I would say Kansas City, because I thought they were a good team before the season. Had a real difficult early season schedule. Cincinnati, Green Bay, back-to-back, and there was another tough game in there. And they also lost Jamal Charles, and that's a devastating injury. But they've kind of got their sea legs back. And as we said, those 2 positions in the AFC are not that far out, like in Minnesota and Atlanta are in the NFC. So it's an easier road. And they're in Denver this week, for instance, and it's a great time to get the Broncos. It's always tough to win out there, but Peyton Manning's banged up. DeMarcus Ware's not going to be there. Aqib Talib is going to be suspended. So if they can somehow pull off the upset, I think they're in good position to make a run towards the playoffs in the second half.
Should be fun to kick that off. The second half starts tonight. Bills and Jets. You got a red out against a green out tonight. Whose uniforms are worse, Buffalo or New York?
I say New York. I've never been a fan of the Jets uniforms. I occasionally I like the goofy Bills look. So I'm probably in the minority there, but I'll go Bills in that aspect of it.
All right, that game tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. The coverage starts at 8 o'clock, or you can stop here at Chickies and Pete's and see the Thursday night football game live. Flyers hockey tonight as well. That game's on our sister station, WPG Talk Radio, 1450. For more coverage from John, head to 97.3ESPN.com. Up in the must-read section, McMullen's Eagles coverage. Click on that. Get it all in one place. And don't forget John McMullen at todayspigskin.com for all of his NFL national coverage. And John, of course, tomorrow with his pick live on the air for Eagles and Dolphins. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, Mike.